Today, I want to talk about fasting, different types of fasting. There's intermittent fasting, there's um, what's really considered full fasting, there's dry fasting, water fast, that kind of stuff. So, I want to talk a bit about fasting, how I incorporate fasting, and just some tips maybe for you to consider if you're going to do fasting yourself. All right. So, first of all, let's talk about intermittent fasting because when it comes to the carnivore diet, I think that most people are probably already doing some sort of intermittent fasting right off the bat. And basically, intermittent fasting is a shorter period of fast. And basically, it's the amount of time from one meal to the next. So let's say you're eating 2 meals a day. Okay. Let's say you eat at noon and then you eat again around 6 p.m. So there's a 6 hour window. And then you don't eat again the next day until noon. You have 18 hours in between that 6 p.m. meal and that noon, the next day meal. And that's considered an 18-hour intermittent fast. Some people eat OMAD just once a day and they'll eat, we'll say 2 p.m. And then the next day they eat again at 2 p.m. They had a 24-hour intermittent fast. And there's not really any extra stuff or tips that you really need for that. Um, just know, like, if you're trying to do, especially OMAD, you probably want a little bit more fat in your diet to help because fat tends to keep you fuller for a longer period of time and makes it easier to do that 24-hour OMAD intermittent fast. Um, Same thing if you're doing like 6 p.m. to noon the next day, that little bit of fat might help. Um, Personally, I don't like to eat a lot of fat later in the day because it can keep me up at night. So I will eat most of my fat at the noon meal. But then if I eat again at 6 p.m., there'll be some fat, but not quite as much as there was at that first meal. So that's kind of personally how I'll do it. But anyway, that's kind of how the intermittent fasting works. And like I said, most people that are doing carnivore are doing some sort of intermittent fasting, 16-hour, 18-hour, type of intermittent fast, up to even 24 hours. Like I said, 18 hours pretty typical where you eat within 2 meals within a 6 hour time period. Okay. So then you get into regular fasting. And for me, regular fasting has to be at least 48 hours. So we're talking 48 to 72 hours or more. And there's two different types of fasting there. There's water fast and there's dry fasting. Dry fasting, you're not drinking anything, you're not drinking any coffee, any water, anything like that. Um, and of course, you're not eating anything. And then in a water fast, you're basically eating, or you're not eating anything, I should say, but you will drink some water, or some people might drink some coffee. It's really dark black coffee, that kind of thing, with no creamer, that kind of stuff. So you typically had those types of things that'll happen with it. For me, if I do a water fast or do a regular fast, whatever, I don't really call it a water fast. I just call it a fast. If I do that, I'm normally drinking some water throughout the day. Okay. So when I do that, I will say usually, and this is for me for anything, it seems like around that 18 to 24-hour time period is usually when I get the most cravings and I seem to want to eat. So if I can get to 24 hours, I can normally go into regular fasting at that point and do 48 to 72 hours. Now, as I get close to 72 hours, I start to get hungry again. If I haven't paid attention to electrolytes, so like maybe had some salt with water, put a little salt on my tongue and drink it down with water, I may start to feel a little lightheaded, that kind of stuff. And that's more like an electrolyte thing. So that kind of stuff could happen as I get closer to 72 hours. So I have to kind of watch that. But for me, that's pretty much how it works. And then when I get to whether it's 48 or 72 hours and I'm ready to break that fast, that's where a little bit of detail comes into play. So for me, I don't want to just jump straight into eating a full meal again. So I want to ease myself back in. So typically what I'll do is I'll have at that 48 hour or that 72 hour, wherever it is that I'm ready to break that fast, I will have a drink where I will put some collagen in with water or maybe some bone broth, so beef bone broth, something to that effect. And I will drink that. Okay. So it'd be like, your typical 8, 12 ounces somewhere in there. And I'll drink that. And then I'll wait about a half hour. And then I'll make up like 1 or 2 eggs with a little bit of butter. And I'll eat that. And then I wait about another hour. And then I'll make up my meal, which is probably going to be like a steak or something like that. I like to have a nice steak, like a 20-ounce steak or something, when I'm breaking a fast. So I'll do that. Maybe I most likely will add a little bit of fermented foods with that. So because I like to do fermented foods with my meal. So I might add some yogurt, whole milk yogurt, some kefir, maybe some kind of fermented cheeses, something like that. And I will add that in with the steak. So this is, it's about probably an hour and a half or so after that first initial drink that I had, the bone broth or the collagen water type thing, right? And probably within the next hour, I will go to the bathroom, and I'll just say, it's going to be a bit of a liquid stool to go to the bathroom. But with doing this, typically that's all I see. Now, some people are going to be different. Some people might not see any loose stools at all. Some people might see a lot. But that's how it works for me. If I just jump straight in to eating a big meal at the 48 or 72 hours, so I don't do that little drink or the 1 or 2 eggs and so forth, and I just go straight to eating a steak, I will end up having loose stools for probably the next 3 to 4 hours several times, like 3, 4, 5 times. So that's the key, is easing back into it when you have done that. And that's how I do it. Now, dry fasting is the other type of fasting. I want to talk about that really quick. And I personally do not do any dry fasting. I do recommend that if anybody wants to do dry fasting, that they are in contact with a medical professional, and that they at least have some sort of monitoring set up to monitor as they're doing the fast. They're doing a few days or whatever it is that they're doing, just to make sure that they're okay. Because some people do have a hard time with dry fasting. Some people might even have a hard time with the water fast. And intermittent fasting is perfectly fine if that's all you can do. 16, 18-hour intermittent fast, that's great. But if you want to do a longer fast, the 48, 72 hours, maybe 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, whatever it is that somebody might want to do, dry fasting, you definitely have to be careful, because you're not getting any water either. You're not drinking anything. And some people just do not do well with that. So definitely consult with a medical professional for that. And it's going to be the same type of thing when you go back to breaking that fast. You're going to start with some sort of drink, like a bone broth, collagen and water, that type of thing. I should say, like when I do the collagen thing with water, I will add a little bit of salt, by the way, to that too. So I'm getting some extra sodium in there. But those are the types of things you would do to kind of get started, ease yourself back into it, just like you would with the water fast that I talked about, where I still drink water throughout the day. So let's say I'm doing a 72-hour fast. I'm still going to drink the same amount of water that I have been drinking. I got a water bottle here. Probably fill it up a few times a day and drink it. And that's all I'm doing. I'm not adding, for me, I don't do any like black coffee or anything like that. I'm not adding any type of food, any fat, any of that kind of stuff until I'm ready to break my fast and I ease back into it. Now, if you're just getting started on the carnivore diet, I would recommend that you just start with intermittent fasting. Don't go into those other fasting yet. For me, I didn't even start doing 48 or 72-hour fasts until I was 3 years on the carnivore diet. I could have done it earlier than that, but I just never really had an interest. And over the last 6 months, I've been doing it more. So I might do 72 or 48-hour fast, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks, somewhere in there. Just shake things up for my body, and it's really good for your immune system and other things that it does. So that's how I do the fasting. If you have any additional questions for me, or you have any comments, fasting that you do or whatever, and just put them down in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. I'll get back to you on any questions as soon as I can. And if you have good tips, you know, that's great for everybody to be able to see those tips.